story now and the growing outrage in Ferguson, Missouri. Many in the community demanding that the officer involved in the shooting of Michael Brown be arrested. Many of them say that that is what will turn the tide here in terms of what's going on in the streets. And tomorrow, prosecutors hope to present evidence to a grand jury. So the actual legal process is about to start here. They will decide whether Officer Darren Wilson used excessive force, and if so, what the charge should be. Joining me now, defense attorney Brian Claypool. He has worked on cases regarding excessive force use by the police, and Keith Sullivan, also a defense attorney. Brian, let me start with you. As we look forward to the beginning of this grand jury process, what do you think is going to be foremost in their minds and in what's presented to them?
Well, Martha, first of all, over the past decade, I've handled 10 shooting death cases. 4 involved unarmed men. 2 of those men were white, 1 was black, 1 Hispanic. So you made a great point earlier about police brutality is blind to race. With that said, this grand jury is going to want to hear information about how this shooting took place. But remember, there are 2 shootings. There's one outside the patrol car and then one in the street. I do have a real problem, though, with the fact that the grand jury process is starting so fast. My experience has been in these cases that it takes months. I had a case where it took a year for all of the investigative work to come together before you could even present it to a grand jury. So I have a fear here that we're reacting out of public outcry instead of getting all the facts together. But the autopsy report here is going to be crucial, and I'll tell you why. One of those shots went above his right eye, but it traveled downward through his cheek and then into his arm. That suggests Mike Brown is 6'4". That strongly suggests that he was falling forward or near the ground when he was shot by Darren Wilson. That's a real problem for Darren Wilson.
Yeah, I think the forensics, you're right, will play such a big role in this in terms of the entry of those bullets, because we know from other cases that you can really trace the direction and where the bullet must have come from based on the way that it enters. Another big issue here, the DA in St. Louis County, Bob McCullough, who has been assigned to this case, Keith, he has been there 23 years. He's the son of a police officer who was murdered in a shootout, and some people are saying that that puts him in a difficult position in this case. What do you think about that, Keith?
No, that's nonsense. Look, he's been elected by the people. He's objective. He can handle the case. It shouldn't be a problem. But I do agree that this is a rush to get into the grand jury. There's no reason to get there yet. They don't even have control of that city yet. I mean, they need to get a death grip on that city, round up these proper witnesses. To run in there so quickly after this shooting took place is ridiculous. But I want to delay in it for a different reason. Not to strengthen the case for the grand jury, because I believe a full and proper and fair investigation will indicate that there is absolutely no basis whatsoever that this should go to the grand jury. If this police officer is indicted, it is an absolute travesty.
Why do you say that?
All of the facts that are coming out day after day after day, hour by hour, we get more information, and it is more favorable for the police officer. It's what's known in law enforcement circles as a good shooting, okay? The question is very simple. Let's boil it down to its bare bones. Did this officer have a reasonable belief that his life was in danger from either death or serious bodily injury? If the answer to that simple inquiry is yes, he's legally authorized to shoot. We should not be listening to the likes of Shady Sharpton and the nonsense that's happening down there. The president should not be involved. Eric Holder should not be involved. They need to get control of that city, do a proper investigation, and not present this to the grand jury. Everything that has come out so far indicates that this officer was justified in using deadly force.
But Michael Brown did not have a gun, Brian.
Yeah, Martha, I'm not sure I agree with that. And I've actually prosecuted a lot of cases against police officers. You need to get information. Let me give you an example. We need to know whether there was a scuffle in that patrol car. We need to know if there was a DNA transfer from Michael Brown onto Officer Wilson, either on his holster or on his gun. And we need to know if Wilson was actually physically injured. They said he was. Where are the photographs?
But it doesn't,
Why haven't we seen any photographs of his injuries?
It doesn't require a physical injury.
Yes,
Let me finish. Go ahead.
You can't. If you have an unarmed suspect, there's no belief that he's committed a felony, and he's standing in front of you, and you can see his hands. Then you don't have a reasonable belief that there's imminent bodily harm.
Absolutely, I couldn't disagree further.
Wait, let me finish.
He just took a
Especially if
beating.
he's 35
How much further do you have to go?
away.
He just took a beating from this individual. The individual turned and came back, and that's corroborated by independent witnesses. They picked it up last night on the YouTube video. They all said the man turned and charged towards that officer. And the police commissioner was completely incorrect, stating that this officer had no knowledge that he had just committed a strong-armed robbery. The story has come out. He absolutely was knowledgeable of it, and that's why he backed up the vehicle, and that's why he engaged this individual.
We've got to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you very much, Keith and Brian. Good to have you both here.
Thanks, Mark.
You get a feel for